My name is Joe. These are just opinions. Welcome to 25 Best. Today, 25 Best Albums from the year 1990. There'll also be a 25 Best Songs from the year 1990. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I've got all these albums ranked on Rate Your Music. If you want to get an update on what was happening in 1990, check out my Radflix video. So Radflix is a series where I do the best movies from each year, and I'll also do a little historical breakdown at the start of that. Let's just jump into it. 25 best albums from 1990. Number 25, I'm going The Traveling Wilburys, Volume 3. Now, this is after Roy Orbison had passed away. Traveling Wilburys supergroup with Jeff Lynne, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, and George Harrison. Roy Orbison passed away after the first album, so he's not really on the second album, but this one has the Wilbury twist. Where Were You Last Night, which is one of my favorite Wilbury tracks. We love the Wilburys around this house. 4-star album, number 25, Traveling Wilburys. Sorry, Inside Out is my favorite track off of that album, not the Wilbury twist, sorry. Number 24 comes from Mark Lanegan, the album from 1990, The Winding Sheet. Lanegan's debut solo, obviously one of the leaders of the grunge movement. He was with Screaming Trees, worked with everybody pretty much around there. Sometimes gets forgotten about, I think, behind the big four Seattle guys. But Mark Lanegan should be up there on the Rushmore of grunge music. Where Did You Sleep Last Night, which wasn't his song, it's a cover as well, but Nirvana did it a few years later at the MTV Unplugged. Ugly Sundays, another great track on this album. Mockingbird's the opening number. Lanegan's kind of a one-off, so rest in peace to Lanegan as well. 24 for 1990. Number 23, East Coast hip-hop album, Wanted Dead or Alive by Cool G Rap and DJ Polo. Classic hip-hop album, near the prime for hip-hop. 90s hip-hop really came into its own. And some people get forgotten about, like Cool G Rap and DJ Polo. Quite a few 4-star tracks on this album. Streets of New York, Wanted Dead or Alive, Money in the Bank, Talk Like Sex, cool beats, great rap. Wanted Dead or Alive, number 23 from 1990. Number 22, Corey Glover and the Boys. We're going with Living Colour's Time's Up. Living Colour, this funk metal kind of one-off group as well. Lots of great albums. They're still touring to this day, and incredible musicians. Corey Glover, Vernon Reid on guitar, Muzz Skillings on bass, and Will Cahoon on drums. Favorite songs on the album: Love Rears Its Ugly Head, Pride, and tag team partners, Time's Up from Living Colour. Number 21 comes from the Cowboy Junkies. The album is The Caution Horses. Margot Timmins, Michael Timmins, Peter Timmins, Allison Timmins. Often same thing. Sometimes gets lost in the weeds or forgotten. Kind of one of those early 90s superstars. Cowboy Junkies still going strong to this day. This was their third album in 1990. They got started in 1986, and they've released like 15, 20 albums by now. Late 80s, early 90s would be their kind of my favorite of their material, or the stuff I'm most familiar with anyways. Caution Horses, great album. Number 21 from 1990. Number 20, another East Coast hip-hop album, going with Taste of Chocolate from Big Daddy Kane, one of the pioneers of hip-hop. He has one of the best flows in hip-hop history for sure. Pretty cool interview too. I watched him, I think it was on Willie D's show. Willie D from Scarface, or from Willie D from Geto Boys has a podcast. Definitely worth checking out. Shout out to Willie D, my favorite member of Geto Boys. Love you, Willie D. Not my favorite Big Daddy Kane album. That's still to come. Later on in the 90s, it will be featured on another one of these lists. My main go-to for hip-hop for a long time was Jurassic 5. Big Daddy Kane, a huge influence, obviously, on those guys. Just his style of flow, he's one of the greats, and I'm not sure if he makes Rushmore, but he would definitely be in the conversation. And so I will have the playlist below as well with all my favorite tracks. I'm going to be doing the top 25 songs for this year, which has a playlist of top 100 songs attached to it. Favorite song on this album is Put Your Weight on It, because I can do it right, and it's hard being the King. Big Daddy Kane comes in at number 20. Number 19 from a Canadian band. They originated in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is in the middle of our beautiful country, in 1984. The band is the Northern Pikes, their album in 1990, Snow in June. Now, snow in June is definitely something you might see up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and it's pretty far north. And I'm from northern Alberta myself originally. Northern Pikes, this album means a lot to me. I have it on wax. A great Canadian band, lots of hits. This is probably their strongest album. I'm assuming their biggest selling album. Some of these songs will make my top 25 list. Some highlights for me are Kiss Me, You Fool, She Ain't Pretty. I remember rocking that one as a kid. And my brother had it on cassette and listened to that quite a bit in the summertime. One of my favorite songs as well, Girl with a Problem, was another big hit for them. This is a great album. I think if you're not familiar with it, you're into kind of the singer-songwriter, power pop, like Teenage Fan Club, that sort of thing. I think you'll really like this one. Snow in June from the Northern Pikes. Number 18. Our first thrash metal album, we're going with Cowboys from Hell. Pantera's Cowboys from Hell. Is that their first album? It might be. Not even close. So this is Pantera's fifth studio album. Cowboys from Hell was basically, I think, what introduced them to the world. Phil Anselmo on vocals, Dimebag Darrell lead guitar, rest in peace, Dimebag. He was tragically murdered on stage. Rex Brown, bass, and Vinnie Paul on drums. This one was recorded down in Texas. Pantera's from Arlington, Texas. They started off in 1981. And Cowboys from Hell, the title track, goes down as one of the greatest thrash metal anthems of all time. I quite like Pantera. Loved them a lot when I was a kid. The heavier the better. As I get older, I don't listen to as much metal. I just don't enjoy it as much. I don't know why. I'd never throw those albums on. I definitely got a soft spot in my heart for Pantera. Cowboys from Hell comes in at number 18. Number 17, recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame from 1990, Tribe Called Quest, their debut album. What's it called again? People's Instinctive Travels and the Paths of Rhythm. Dave Chappelle just inducted these guys in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Incredible speech. I love hearing Dave preach, especially for his love for hip-hop. And Dave Chappelle is, indirectly responsible for me and my love of hip-hop. He probably doesn't realize it. I'm sure he's influenced tons of people with hip-hop from his TV show. And then later on, just promoting hip-hop when he's talking. I used to love watching Dave Letterman. Obviously, who doesn't love Chappelle? And I remember I went out and bought Nos Illmatic after him saying it's one of the greatest rap albums ever. And Tribe Called Quest is another band that kind of in a similar ilk that I got into around the same time, which way late to the party. Totally love Tribe Called Quest and move into, my top 5 rap groups of all time easily. It's just incredible. You got Jerobi, Ali Shaheed Muhammad as the DJ, Phife Dawg and Q-Tip as the MCs, and Q-Tip does the production as well. Phife, rest in peace. That was a big deal for me. That's actually, so Chappelle hosted Saturday Night Live in 2016, and that was right after Phife had passed away. And he talks about it in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction speech. But that performance on Saturday Night Live, I didn't even know who Phife Dawg was until I watched that performance. So that sucks that I didn't know who he was until he had passed away. I knew who Q-Tip was for the longest time, and I love Beastie Boys. He's featured on some of that. He's featured on Groovers in the Heart. He's featured on lots of stuff. Great debut album. It's not their best album, but Tribe Called Quest does not miss. Every album is great. I've got it 4 stars. Can I Kick It? Such a classic with that with the backing track Lou Reed, Walk on the Wild Side. Also, Bonita Applebum. And I think that was kind of like the first big track that Tip had written. I love this stuff, this hip hop, the everyday person stuff. It's not gangster rap. It's, backpack rap and lots of jazz influence, jazz beats. And just watch that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction that Chappelle does. It's great. Explains everything. I 1,000% agree with him. Thank you again, Dave Chappelle. Number 16, we're going with Flood from They Might Be Giants. John Linnell, John Flansburgh, Dan Miller, Brian Doherty, Tony Mamone. They Might Be Giants. Kind of kicking myself because I inherited a large CD collection. Thank you, Dallas. I gave a bunch away to somebody that sold a bunch of records online, CDs, all these CDs. And I actually had every CD from They Might Be Giants, and I never opened one or even listened to it. Now I'm discovering that I actually really quite like these guys. And I'm feeling like a bit of a moron for getting rid of all those CDs. But anyways, I love this album. This might be my favorite They Might Be Giants album. It definitely has some of their bigger songs on it. Istanbul is not Constantinople. I remember hearing that song when I was a kid and thinking that was like an ancient song, I didn't realize it was these guys who were kind of brilliant pop writers. Indie pop, geek pop, right? Almost, closely related to, every song kind of sounds a little bit like Weird Al Yankovic might have been behind it. Birdhouse in Your Soul is such a cool song. I'm a big Ween fan, as I've talked about many times in most of these episodes. Birdhouse in Your Soul just, to me, sounds like something that could have came from Geener and Diener of Ween, but it came from John and John of They Might Be Giants. Great track, great album. Really like the creativity, and they're just fun to listen to, easy listening, hooks left, right, and center, and just constantly changing as the album goes on. It's like in my, anyways, power pop, Americana. It's got all kinds of different tags on it. Flood is number 16 for 1990. Number 15 from 1990, you're going with the self-titled album from the Geto Boys. This is actually their third studio album. This album features Willie D, who I already gave a shout out to in this video, Scarface, and Bushwick Bill. DJ Ready Red on this one. Geto Boys, also from Texas, Houston, Texas. This is dark gangster rap. The Geto Boys, these guys are hard. I love them. Willie D is actually my favorite member of the group. I know that Scarface is probably the most popular because he kind of broke out on his own and did some things as well. Huge respect for Willie D, and shout out to his podcast. I love his podcast. Bushwick Bill, rest in peace. And Scarface is still kicking and doing great out there. This album has the song Scarface, one of my favorite songs, Assassins, and one that most people will know is called Mind of a Lunatic. I love what they're sampling too in a lot of these tracks. A lot of Bill Withers in there, other stuff, other people I've featured on this channel in the past. They pull from a lot of the same stuff. Shout out to James Smith, who is DJ Ready Red. Shout out to Willie D, Scarface, Bushwick Bill, the Geto Boys, one of my absolute favorite gangster rap groups. And they would finish in my top 5, I believe, for rap groups of all time. Love Scarface, love Willie D. Number 14 is the debut album from grunge A-listers, Alice in Chains. The album is Facelift. That's Sean Kinney on drums, Mike Starr on bass, Jerry Cantrell lead guitars, and Lane Staley lead vocals. Cantrell and Staley, these harmonies are legendary. Grunge is such a weird genre, right? Where you have, these sort of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, who are all very different bands in a lot of ways, but they all came from Seattle, and sometimes they work together and all that stuff. I don't know if Alice in Chains or Soundgarden are my favorite. That's hard to say if I was to pick a favorite group from that scene. This is not my favorite Alice in Chains album, even though I've got it at 4 stars, and even though it's full of great songs. We Die Young, it opens off with Man in the Box, 5-star song. Real Thing, 5-star song. Confusion, almost a 5-star song. It's a great album. It's dark, it's grunge, it's metal. Alice in Chains and Soundgarden are pretty heavy. Rest in peace, Lane Staley, one of the greatest voices in, especially in the early 90s around this time. I saw Alice in Chains open for Guns N' Roses in 2016 in Seattle, and they were awesome. So go check out the new Alice in Chains. I believe it's a singer from Moke, which is another band I kind of liked, that's joined Alice in Chains, I think. Facelift, number 14 from 1990. Number 13 from 1990 comes from Ween, and it's God Ween Satan from 1990. Their debut album, which is 26 tracks, greatest hits from their early days when they were teenagers, just making cassettes for friends. They took their 26 favorite songs to the studio when they're around 1920. And live, that's 26 bangers to see live at their concert. On the album, it's really obnoxious. It's kind of hard to listen to, especially if you're a newcomer to the group. You're not going to like it. That's pretty much a guarantee. To me, there's 26 incredible songs on this album. Gene and Dean Ween from New Hope, Pennsylvania. On this album, there's a bit of Claude Coleman, a bit of, and I don't actually think is Claude Coleman actually on this one? I don't think so. I think it's basically Gene and Dean Ween and Andrew Weiss from the Rollins Band. I've got an episode on this album on this channel, so type in 25 or type in 10 best Godween Satan, and you should get that episode on this channel. Number 13, Godween Satan from Ween, Hail Boognish. Number 12, their third album from Eric B. and Rakim. And we're going with Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em, 1990. That's their third album. I think they have 4 albums total, I want to say. Eric B. as a DJ producer, one of the greatest of all time. As far as important DJs go, he's like top 3. He's that important because their album, Paid in Full, before this, basically inspired Public Enemy to change their sound after their first album, and in order to create possibly the greatest rap album of all time. It Takes a Nation of Millions to hold us back. Rakim is arguably the greatest rapper of all time, or one of them. He's on many Rushmores. He's not on mine, but he's damn close. It's not their best album, but it's still incredibly important and incredibly good start to finish. Very creative beats from Eric B. Incredible flow from Rakim. In the Ghetto is a standout for me. Untouchables is a standout for me. And Mahogany, another standout for me from this album, this power duo. Number 12, Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em. Number 11, his fourth album, we're going with If There Was a Way from Dwight Yoakam, 1990. Pete Anderson, J.D. Foster, Steve Brantley, Greg Lees, Brent Rowan, Gene Chrisman, Chris Tench. This album was recorded in California. Dwight Yoakam from Kentucky. I got into Dwight Yoakam watching Terminator 2. Guitars, Cadillacs, hillbilly music. Something crazy about Dwight Yoakam is if you see an album of Dwight's kicking around at your local thrift shop, pawn shop, thrift store thing, buy it because they're great country albums start to finish. This guy is a legend and should be talked about more as one of the all-time greats in this genre. Neo-traditional country, all the good stuff from the past, but brought into this new sound. Number 11, I'm going with Dwight Yoakam, If There Was a Way. The 10th best album from 1990 comes from Los Lobos. I'm going with The Neighborhood from 1990. Another band like Dwight Yoakam, who, in my opinion, has never missed. Every album, great start to finish. Great summer music. Love chilling to this kind of roots rock Tex-Mex sound. David Hidalgo, Cesar Rosas, Luis Perez, Conrad Lozano, and Steve Berlin. Steve Berlin later on, I'm pretty sure it was him. He's in the Diamond Rugs, which is a super group. Check out my episode on the Diamond Rugs on this channel, who I've only got 2 albums, but those 2 albums will certainly be making the top 10 for their respective years. I love Los Lobos. This one definitely starts off stronger than it finishes. Down on the Riverbed, Angel Dance, Deep Dark Hole. Number 9, going with a Canadian band. They formed in Toronto, Canada, and as Blue Rodeo. The album is Casino from 1990. Bob Wiseman on keyboards and accordion. I love the accordion on Blue Rodeo albums. Cleve Anderson on drums, Basil Donovan on bass, Greg Keeler on vocals and guitar, and Jim Cuddy vocals and guitar. Trust Yourself's a big hit here in Canada. Till I Am Myself Again is probably one of their biggest hits. Very popular up here in Canada. Growing up, I was never really a huge fan. Kind of a funny story happened to me. Jim Cuddy was touring in 2002 with a solo group here on Vancouver Island. And I think it was maybe the start of the tour. Friends of mine, the Fine Swiss Timepieces, were opening up for them at a local establishment in Nanaimo called the Queens. After the show, Jim Cuddy's band played. They were great, and we started talking with them, and we ended up being, you guys bring the beers, we'll go hang out at a beach. We ended up partying on a beach late night, nothing rowdy, just a couple beers and just chilling out. And I was nervous because Jim Cuddy was there, and I didn't know any Blue Rodeo, really. And I was like, oh, shoot, hope this doesn't come up. But it actually kind of made it great because they were all really big hockey fans, and I'm a huge hockey fan. So we just talked hockey pretty much the whole time, and I hope they appreciated that. I hope they remember that. But that was me, and Blue Rodeo is great, and the older I get, the more I love them. Love their collaborations with other Canadian artists. Obviously, the Tragically Hip. He had a real special moment with Gord Downie before he passed away. I saw him singing on the tribute to Home for a Rest, Spirit of the West. I saw them singing on the tribute to them too. Number 8, we're going with In Excess. The album is X, so it's their 10th year in the business. They've been going since 1980 at this point. John Ferris, Gary Beers, Kirk Pengilly, Tim Ferriss, Andrew Ferris, and Michael Hutchins. Lead vocals. This one had Suicide Blonde was a big song off of it. Disappear, another great track off of it. Pop rock, sophisticated pop. These guys are from Australia? They're from Sydney, Australia. They formed in 1977. Previous album Kick was a huge album, and this is a pretty good follow-up with Disappear and Suicide Blonde being big hits. They sound very 80s, early 90s. This is really the sound that a lot of groups were kind of going for. In Excess nailed it. 7th best album from 1990, according to me, Joepinionated. Remember to like, comment, subscribe on the channel. I'm going with Armchair Theater from Jeff Lynne. I was never crazy big on ELO. I've come to like it a lot more kind of in recent years. I do love Jeff Lynne's voice. Obviously a creative singer. I love his stuff with the Wilburys, his work with Tom Petty. He's a legend. On this album, the main members are Jeff Lynne, Richard Tandy, George Harrison. September song, real standout for me. Every Little Thing, the opening number. Jeff Lynne, number 7 for 1990 with Armchair Theater. Number 6, Neck and Neck from Chet Atkins and Mark Knopfler. Friend of mine, Clint, showed me this record, I believe the first time I ever met him. And he covered up the names on the album and showed me the two faces and said, you know something about music, tell me who these two guys are. And I don't think I got it by looking at their faces. And Chet Atkins looks like George W. Bush, I think is what I said. Obviously, Chet Atkins, the Nashville Sound, one of the most important producers ever, one of the most important guitar players ever, and maybe the most important in both categories. It's arguable. If you're a big time country Nashville Sound person, then he is the king of the mountain. And Mark Knopfler, who has his own unique style of guitar playing, finger picking that is gorgeous. His tones are incredibly beautiful. His songwriting is top notch. I like his voice a lot too. Some people are kind of a bit cringy on his voice, and I think it's really great. This album has Poor Boy Blues, which is straight up, pop masterpiece, country rock, country boogie. I'll See You in My Dreams, another really beautiful track towards the end of the album. Respect, Chet Atkins and Martin Knopfler. Number 5 from 1990, going with Garth Brooks, No Fences. And Garth Brooks is the force behind Garth Brooks, as we all know. Garth Brooks, one of the greatest selling country artists of all time. It's got to be in the top something. This album was certified platinum 18 times. This album features, one of the biggest country anthems ever, Friends in Low Places, as well as Unanswered Prayers, The Thunder Rolls, Wild Horses. I had this album on CD when I was younger. My brother was living out in Saskatchewan for a bit and came back with some country music when I was a kid. And Friends in Low Places, that's when it entered our lives. A couple years after this came out, I had the CD. I think, actually, you know what? I had my brother's CD. It was my brother's CD. Loved it. Played it quite a bit. Thought it was great. The Thunder Rolls. I was religious when I was a kid as well. I was going to church at the time, and Unanswered Prayers, I thought was a cool song. Wild Horses. It takes me back. I haven't listened to this song in a really long time, or this album at all in a really long time. But I would definitely listen to it. I can't knock it. I've got to give it the props it deserves. It's number 5 album of 1990. No Fences from Garth Brooks. Number 4, I'm going with AC/DC's The Razor's Edge. If you're a hardcore music critic or whatever, you probably don't like The Razor's Edge that much. This album means a lot to me. It was produced in Vancouver, close by where I live, at Little Mountain Sound Studio, produced by Bruce Fairbairn. At this time, Chris Slade, was on drums, Cliff Williams on bass, Malcolm Young rhythm guitar, Angus Young lead guitar, Brian Johnson on the vocals. Malcolm was drinking a lot at this time, so he actually ended up kind of sitting back, and they brought somebody in on the tour to play for Malcolm for a bit. He did a bit of a rehab stint. And that's when he realized that Chris Slade wasn't really gelling well with the band at the time, and that's when they went back to their old drummer. I don't think of his name, Phil Rudd. They went back to Phil Rudd at that point. As Cool as It Comes, I remember I was still pretty young, even in 1990, and I remember being a little bit freaked out the first time I heard Thunderstruck. I thought it was almost kind of scary. Thunderstruck, I'm pretty sure, was the first hit. Money Talks was one of the first hits. Are You Ready? Fire Your Guns. I love The Razor's Edge, the title track. I love Got You by the Balls. This one has Mistress for Christmas too, doesn't it? Mistress for Christmas. Yeah, Mistress for Christmas on this album. I love the way Angus sounds on this album, the production quality to me. I think that Angus just soars on this album. I think that Money Talks is just a standout, and nothing cooler than AC/DC in 1990, Angus Young. The video for Thunderstruck, legendary. The song Thunderstruck, one of the elite caliber heavy metal hard rock songs of all time is Thunderstruck. If I were to rank the AC/DC albums, I'd probably have the 80s albums way below this one. So, except for 1980 and 1981. But I'd have the rest of them below this one. So The Razor's Edge, number 4. Number 3, I'm going with the album Belly Button by the band Jellyfish. That's Andy Sturmer on lead vocals, drums, and percussion. Roger Manning on keyboards, Jason Faulkner on guitars, Chris Manning as well on bass guitar. Jellyfish is from San Francisco. They've got kind of almost like a Blind Melon sort of sound. This album was produced in Hollywood, California. I can't remember what the producer's name was. There's almost a little bit of almost like a glam feel to it sometimes. Power pop, Paisley Underground. The Man I Used to Be on this album. She Still Loves Him. That Is Why. Jellyfish, a band I often forget about. And today I'm giving them mad props. Number 3 from 1990 is Jellyfish. The Jellyfish album, Belly Button. Number 2, 1990 albums countdown here. We're almost at the end. We're going with another hip-hop rap album, political hip-hop album. One of the greatest hip-hop bands of all time, if not the greatest. Public Enemy. We're going with Fear of a Black Planet. That's Professor Griff as the Minister of Information, Terminator X on the Wheels of Steel, Flava Flav as the hype man and rapper, and Chuck D, lead vocals. You got Eric Vietnam Sadler, Hank and Keith Shockley, the Bomb Squad, behind all the beats and the production, and what goes into each track is very important. I've got 2 episodes on this channel about Public Enemy where I kind of tell you about how I realized how great they are, and that Chuck D, in my opinion, is the most important rapper in history. Growing up, I didn't realize, it's just a lot of noise on a lot of these Public Enemy tracks when I was really young. I liked a couple of the hits, but I didn't like, say, Fight the Power or something like that. It's just too busy. I was into, MC Hammer at the time. I've had, a few different stages in my life where I've completely got back into Public Enemy and realized that they're great, and for whatever reason, they disappeared a few times, but they haven't disappeared on me in a couple of years. I've been heavy rotation, love these guys, everything I can. I love interviews with Flav. I love interviews with Chuck D. They seem so honest and down to earth. And smart, well-read, awesome. Just awesome people and very loyal to each other, even with, lawsuits and all that sort of stuff. They're still totally civil and down to earth and just pretty pioneers, awesome. Obviously, this album has Fight the Power, which is the anthem to Do the Right Thing, the movie from Spike Lee. Can't Do Nothing For You, Man. Fun track, love that one as a kid. Welcome to the Terror Dome, huge hit. Brother's Gonna Work It Out, huge hit. And my favorite track on the album is 911's a Joke. Watch Flav talk about that song, just saying it was based on a real incident when 911 first came out, and somebody had actually died waiting for 911. So he has a personal story about that. And a bunch of things from that story are in this track, 911 is a Joke. It's infectious. It's a great beat. I also love hearing Nardwuar interview Flava Flav, Nardwuar, the Human Serviettes, Canadian legend from just across the water from me, where he talked about it in that as well and went really toe-to-toe with him. And that's where I realized that, Flav can really hold his own. I just didn't know much about him. Whatever his Flavor of Love TV show was, and Bridget Nielsen and all that sort of stuff, just thought he was a bit of a train wreck, honestly. And he's not. He's definitely had some problems in the past, and he's just very honest about everything. He's a legend, and Chuck D is the legend, and Professor Griff is bringing some amazing content to the lyrics, and the Bomb Squad and Terminator X. So anyways, number 2, Fear of a Black Planet. Number 1 album of 1990, according to myself, Joepinionated. And I didn't actually get to a 5-star album this year, 4.5 stars for the top. I'm going with Nick Cave. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and their album from 1990 is called The Good Son. The Good Son is Nick Cave's 6th studio album. Roland Wolf on piano, Kid Congo Powers on guitar, Thomas Wilder on drums, Blixa Bargeld on guitar, Mick Harvey on guitars, Nick Cave, pianos, vocals, organ. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds are from Melbourne, Australia, but this album was recorded in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Art rock, dark cabaret music, gothic rock, gospel, singer-songwriter. Nick Cave was really dark in the 80s, and this was sort of like a step out of that, a little bit more approachable music. Did the Cure deep dive recently, and I feel like the Cure rarely stepped out of that. I feel like when they do step out of the super dark stuff, that's when I love the Cure. And with Nick Cave, it's the same kind of thing. The dark stuff is great. It's good. You're in the mood to kind of be depressed and mopey, or, I call it heroin rock, but it's just it's what I picture the characters in Trainspotting listening to. Nick Cave was introduced to me by my friend who passed away this year, Mark, and he was the lead singer of a band called Live Jimmy Presley. His stage name was Mark Presley, and respect to Mark, because he introduced me to a lot of music, REM, Nick Cave, for sure, Nick Cave. And even got me to love Neil Young. As a Canadian, the South African got me to love Neil Young and Nick Cave and R.E.M. and countless others. I remember watching the videos of Nick Cave with Mark. This album features some of my favorite Nick Cave tracks, the Ship Song, The Good Son, and the Weeping Song. If you don't know who Nick Cave is, you're missing out. This guy's incredible. He's still going to this day, and honestly, he's like a fine wine. He just keeps getting better. So respect to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. You guys have the best album in 1990. Be sure to stay tuned on this channel. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. The top 25 songs from 1990 is coming up next. Christmas Movie Marathon is just around the corner. And hundreds of other episodes on this channel. I'm sorry I'm a little low on facts and high on opinions. And we'll catch you on the next one.